Welcome to the Environmental Justice Lab. I am your host, Dr. Leslie Joseph. Thank you so much for joining me. Before we begin this episode, I want to dedicate it to a very special person. Someone who's been very special to myself, to my wife, to my children. This person is my wife's grandmother, Mary Gladell Rice Martin. She passed away last Monday at the age of 90, and she was an amazing person. She raised an amazing family, my wife included, and she worked really hard. She grew up in the segregated South, and she didn't have a formal education, no college degree. But even with that, she worked a bunch of different jobs as a child, just taking care of herself, her family, the people around her. And as she got older, she got different types of jobs, and she landed at BASF. It was a big factory in the upstate of South Carolina, and with that job, she was able to get a home. She was able to raise 4 children, take care of her grandchildren, my wife included, and position herself to be a pillar in the community and at her church. Everybody knew her. She was loved. She was serving at the soup kitchen. She would be in church every Sunday, every Wednesday. She was out and about, and people recognized her, and they appreciated everything that she did. She was a big deal in the town she grew up in and with the people that she knew. But it's something that's interesting that I was thinking about when I was reflecting on her life and what she meant to us, was that this job at BASF, this job was a tremendous reason why she was able to build the life that she built. And that's a lot of the hope that we have when these large companies come to small towns, to smaller states. It's that it'll bring vitality and economic activity and upward mobility to the residents. And she definitely experienced that. And I'm thankful that she had an opportunity to work there and to do all that she did. But here's the paradox. While she was building her life at BASF and really creating a legacy that's going to live on long after she's gone from here, BASF is still the world's largest chemical maker, and it is a huge purveyor of environmental racism and environmental injustice all across the country. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. In honor of my good friend, my grandmother-in-law, we're going to talk about BASF. We're going to talk about the fact that, first of all, they're all over the upstate in South Carolina, and they employ hundreds of people, and people's lives have been changed, including my wife's family. And if you listen to BASF tell their story, that's what they want you to know, that their factories and their operations change lives, and they would stop there. But that's not where we're going to stop. In this episode, we're going to talk about BASF, and we're going to talk about the environmental damage that they've caused. We're going to talk about the injustice that they facilitate with the way they do business, and hopefully think about what we can do and how we can think about these small towns that want that activity but are left devastated by the pollution and the degradation that comes along with it. So let's talk about it. Stay tuned. This is the Environmental Justice Lab. Welcome to the Environmental Justice Lab. I'm Dr. Joseph. Thank you so much for listening. We're talking about BASF today. We're talking about who they are, what they do, and how it damages areas around their operations. And so if you're not familiar with BASF, don't worry about it. Most people aren't. And that's because you won't find their names on any of the products that you buy. You won't see any billboards. You won't see any commercials, because the products that their materials go into go under other names produced by other companies. And that's the way they want you to understand what they do. They don't make the products that we use. They make the chemicals that go into the products that make those products what they are, right? Maybe you've heard the commercial.
At BASF, we don't make the sunscreen, we make it stronger. We don't make the helmet, we make it tougher. We don't make the bridge, we make it more durable. We don't make the car, we make it more colorful. We don't make a lot of the products you buy, we make a lot of the products you buy better. BASF, the chemical company.
We don't make the products, we make them better. That's what BASF wants you to understand about what they do. And so here's some quick background. So BASF is a German company. It was founded in 1865, and it is currently the biggest, the largest chemical company in the world. They started off making synthetic dyes, different colors. As they began to grow, as they began to expand their operations, they got into agricultural products, so pesticides, herbicides, insecticides. They do a lot with the automotive industry. They do a lot of other types of chemical production that goes into a lot of the products that you know and love. Dish detergents, pots and pans, all kinds of things. And so that is what they do. The North American branch of this huge multinational organization is headquartered in New Jersey. According to the website, they have 16,700 employees across America, and in 2021, they made about $26 billion with a B. Their motto is, we create chemistry for a sustainable future. If you go on their website, you'll see all of the ways that they help facilitate sustainability through the products and the chemicals that they make. And right now, they'll tell you that they're in 6 different divisions that they're focusing on: chemicals and nutrition, agricultural products, industrial solutions, all kinds of stuff. And so this is a very big organization. And so if you live in a small town, if you're from a small state, you're probably looking for someone like this to come in with their portfolio, with their background, to bring jobs, to bring economic activity and vibrance and excitement to your town, to your state, and to whatever you're trying to accomplish wherever you are. But here's the problem. Along with all of that technology and chemical production and activity that they bring comes massive, massive levels of pollution, of degradation and harm to various communities that they operate in. And so I don't know if you recall the last episode, we talked about ProPublica and their investigative reporting on sacrifice zones. They had a couple of really good articles about companies like BASF and the ways in which the supply chain and the way that they produce what they make harms and destroys communities where those facilities reside. And so they had one very interesting discussion about BASF and what they are and what they do. And so one thing that they noted was that the emissions from their American plants alone elevate the cancer risks for 1.5 million people across the country. They found that BASF's footprint of pollution is larger than any other foreign-owned company in the United States. They found that it's the 4th largest toxic footprint among all the companies in the U.S. And along with that, according to the 2020 Top 100 Polluters Index, they saw that BASF was number 2 in polluting our water and number 4 in polluting our air in 2018. And so they have a history and they have a long trajectory of polluting and damaging our environment with their operations. ProPublica did this amazing kind of, not even just analysis, just following the ways in which one particular product that they make damages so many communities because of what it takes to produce it and what the company does as it operates at those locations. And so they tracked the production of Cascade Dishwasher Detergent, which I didn't even know was a problem. I use it all the time. And I use Cascade specifically because of how well it works. And of course, BASF, they don't make the detergent. They make the detergent better with their chemicals. And so this article starts in Port Arthur, Texas. So in Port Arthur, there's a big production facility where they make ethylene. And in the article, they talk about ethylene being the most important chemical produced because it's used for things like plastics that go into piping, to insulation, to synthetic rubber, to airline wings, to antifreeze. This is a big, important chemical that's made in Port Arthur, which is a small, predominantly African-American town in Texas. No surprise there. That's where they put the plant. that produces this specific chemical. And so when they produce this chemical, the facility emits benzene. Benzene is a carcinogen. Benzene has been linked to leukemia and other forms of cancer. It's very, very harmful to ingest, to inhale air laden with benzene. But that's what's happening at this plant in this town in Texas as they make this chemical called ethylene. And if you recall, BASF is a German company. But what we learned through this article and other reporting is that the German government has much stricter regulation. And so much like how in the United States, we'll send manufacturing and other types of industry overseas where there's fewer regulation and cheaper costs, BASF in Germany sent their plants over to America because there's fewer regulations and lower costs. Instead of monitoring and instead of regulating the emission of benzene the way the Germans do, our agencies allow the plants themselves to do their own monitoring and to basically regulate themselves and report their data to the federal government, to the state government, and they just are on the honor system, basically. We take them at their word that they won't exceed their permitted levels of emissions. There's no third-party verification. There's no regulators checking in on them. They do their own monitoring in-house. They send the reports out, and we just trust what it says. And that's how they operate. In this small town that's predominantly black in Texas. So as you might imagine, cancer rates are higher. The air is polluted. The water is often not safe to drink. It's a big problem. And because of the series we're in, we're talking about sacrifice zones. This is one of them. This plant comes to this town. This town is overburdened with pollution, and there's no strong regulatory framework to reduce the contamination that they're experiencing. And they've been sacrificed for this company to produce what they believe is more important than the health of the people that live there. And that's the first stop. So we're not talking about detergent yet. This is just one chemical that will then be integrated into the product. This article goes from Port Arthur, Texas to Geismar, Louisiana, where this ethylene is processed into ethylene oxide. There's a standard, there's a regulatory limit on ethylene oxide, but it's not anywhere near what Germany's is. So if you compared what is emitted from this plant to what is emitted in Germany's similar plant, since Germans have stricter regulations, since they have inspections, since they have their own monitoring from their government, the emissions in the U.S. from these types of plants are 9 times higher than the ones in Germany. And because of the way our regulatory framework is structured, it's okay, it's legal, it's no problem. And the research shows, the public health researchers have linked this chemical to higher rates of lymphoma, breast cancer, and leukemia. Another carcinogen that is being emitted into the atmosphere in this small town in Louisiana at rates that are much higher than the actual factories in their home country emit in their communities. And that's already bad enough. That's already a problem. But even beyond that, this particular town, we're going to talk about this in a different episode, this particular town is located in the heart of the industrial corridor that runs through Louisiana that is often referred to as Cancer Alley. We're going to talk about Cancer Alley. Cancer Alley is a really important sacrifice zone to understand because so many dynamics are happening in Cancer Alley. But just for this episode, just know that there's about an 85 to 100 mile area that is full of industrial, petrochemical, oil refineries. It's full of these large scale industrial facilities. Tons of them all across this area. So for someone who lives in this particular city, they're not just breathing in ethylene oxide that's being emitted from this plant. They're breathing in that at high levels along with everything else around them. It is just compounding and compounding the issue. There's a lot more they're having to deal with because it's not simply one facility, it's many, hundreds of them. And so that's the second stop, the second sacrifice zone on this road toward producing Cascade dish detergent, courtesy of BASF. We've gone through Port Arthur, we've gone through Geismar, Louisiana, and the third stop, which is very important for me, is South Carolina. That's where I'm from. Here we stop in Spartanburg, South Carolina. It's in the upstate. And of course, the article says Spartanburg specifically. That's the major city. But in reality, the facilities are in small towns that are around Spartanburg. Clemson, Seneca, Whitestone, like these types of towns are where these operations take place. And so now we're taking our ethylene oxide. So we started off in Texas with our ethylene. We went to Louisiana to get ethylene oxide. And now we're in South Carolina taking that ethylene oxide and turning it into different surfactants. If you don't know, surfactants are chemicals that reduce surface tension. That's how you get grease off of a pot, or how you get grime off of your counters when you're cleaning. These surfactants are basically soaps that you use to clean things and to remove really difficult stains and really difficult grease and other kinds of substances that don't just wash away. They're creating these surfactants in these facilities in South Carolina, and we use them for cleaning, we use them for vehicles, we use them for roads, and there's a big plant in South Carolina. Emissions are up. According to ProPublica, the plant that does this work creates elevated cancer risks for about 96,000 people in South Carolina, a risk that's above EPA's target level. And what's interesting about this particular situation was that BASF wanted to build their plant on the coast by the water, and obviously have access to the ocean. It's a nicer place to be, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, the coast in South Carolina is amazing. Who wouldn't want to build their facilities there? And so they were approved. They were ready to build. I'm sure they had the designs ready, the construction team ready to go. And this is the 1970s. And so what's interesting is during that time, there's segregation, there's Jim Crow, there's a lot of racial tension and strife. But guess what? When BASF wanted to build their plant on the coast of South Carolina, the black fishermen who fished off the coast and the rich white real estate owners who owned land, valuable land on the coast, who knew that value would go down with a plant there, they teamed up and they said no thank you to BASF. They said you need to get that plant out of here. They protested, they marched, they petitioned the government. They did all kinds of things to keep this plant from being built, and so they ended up not building it. An amazing show of unity in South Carolina. It doesn't really happen that much now, but they came together to push back against this facility. And so they backed off. They had to cancel the project, and they ended up moving it to the upstate, away from the water, smaller town, less visibility, less resistance. Because at this point, South Carolina used to be known for producing textiles and tobacco and all kinds of manufacturing, but those things have left. And so they're clamoring for more business, for more industry. And so they were welcoming BASF. That's when they ended up building the plant there. And that's where Gigi, we call her Gigi. That's Mary Gladell Rice Martin. We call her Gigi. That's where she was working. I don't know what she did there specifically. I'm sure she wasn't on the line with the chemicals, but I wonder how safe the workers were working at that plant. And I wonder what BASF actually did to protect the people who were there. My guess is not much, because these elevated cancer risks, high levels of pollution is really bad. And so you can see just from these first 3 stops along the way, sacrifice zone, sacrifice zone, sacrifice zone. That's what is happening when it comes to producing the chemicals that go into the detergent that makes my dishes very, very clean. There's more to the story. I mean, I stopped at South Carolina. That's where I wanted to stop. But don't forget, they make the products better. So those surfactants got sent to another factory where they actually make the detergent. Because the detergent is made by Procter & Gamble. It's not made by BASF. They don't make detergent. They make detergent better. I don't know what Procter & Gamble does at their facilities, how they manage things when they produce their products. But that's what's going on with some of the simple things that we use every day. This is the cost of some of these products. This is the cost of having these products in our home that we rely on. And look, I get it, right? You're a small town. You want jobs. You want economic activity. You want tax revenue. You want to grow. You have a lot of desires for your town and for your city and for the people that live there. And they deserve that. They should be able to work and make a living. But at what cost? And at what point do we hold people accountable for the damage that they cause and for the things that they do that harm the very people that we're trying to help, that we want to see make it in this world? And so that's something that I've been thinking about and struggling with, this idea that it seems like, at least here in America, we prioritize the economy over the environment. We want the economic activity at the expense of environmental protection. And so we let these massive companies come in, build massive facilities, pollute on a large scale, and the justification is, well, they're creating jobs. They're resurrecting our town. They're giving us a new leash on life. And, I can't argue that. That's not the case because it's true for a lot of people. My wife is a beneficiary of the opportunities that BASF offered. But yet and still, we have to protect what's around us, and we have to be mindful of the deliberate polluting to lower costs and to maximize profits. And so this is just something that we really need to take seriously and think about. And so what should we do? What's the idea behind all this? Why am I even talking about it? So this is what I'm not saying. This is what I don't want you to do. I'm not saying we need to stop buying Cascade dish detergent. I'm not saying that. Wash your dishes. Use something that works. Be hygienic. I'm not going to say stop using a product that has the ability to keep things clean and sanitary. Now you could say there's other alternatives that are more sustainable, that are greener, that are more helpful than Cascade. That's probably true. I'm not familiar with them, but I'm sure they're out there, and I'm sure they are just as effective and just as useful without all the degradation. But I'm not saying to stop using any kind of product at this point. I'm not saying even to boycott anything with BASF in it. You look at the labels, you look at the production, and you say, oh no, BASF has a chemical in that product, I can't use it. I'm not saying that either. I'm not saying that. I don't think that's something we should be talking about at this moment. In time, we should always be looking for something sustainable and something that's really helpful. But I'm not saying stop using products with BASF stuff in it. I'm not even saying to shut down the factories. I'm not even saying that much, because the factories can stay. The facilities are okay. Here's the issue. Because they're doing it in Germany, it's not a problem over there. They regulate and they monitor and they protect while they're producing what they're producing. So it can be done. All I want is for everybody to do better. Just do better. Why can't we do better? I need the regulators to do better. DHEC, in South Carolina we have DHEC. DHEC is the Department of Health and Environmental Control. They issue the permits. They're responsible for regulating on a state level. I need you to do better. The EPA, when it comes to regulating and monitoring these facilities, these companies, I need you to do much, much better. I need our elected officials to do better. They have to do better too. Don't let these companies come in with their big business plans and promises, and then they pollute and dump all their contaminants on the community, in the name of jobs and low-cost production. Right? This is what happens when you prioritize the economy over the environment, right? We just talked about that. You're so desperate for these companies to come in that you'll give them whatever they want, and you won't enforce any meaningful regulation to protect the people that they're exposing their chemicals to. It's not good. And of course, these plants, let's just be honest, they end up small rural towns, Black and brown communities. That's where we find these plants. That's where the pollution happens. Don't forget, on the coast, when they want to go to the coast, they couldn't go to the coast. They couldn't go there. Suburbs, you won't find them in the suburbs. They're not going to be there either. They're strategically located in areas where they believe they'll get little resistance, and they feel like the people that live there are not worth protecting. It's just the truth. But ultimately, we need BASF to do better. BASF and every other large industrial company, multinational corporation to do better. Monitor your emissions. What are you putting out there? What does your permit allow you to do? Honor your obligations. Protect your workers. Your workers are working for you. Protect them. In the community, you claim that you're serving the community with your activities, with your facility. Well, if you care about the communities as well, you'll protect them from the pollution that you're emitting. We just need to do better. Just do better. We can do better than this. I know we can. I know we can do better than this. I know that we can regulate better. We can make better decisions as far as planning goes. We can have stronger monitoring requirements. We can do more to protect people. We don't have to shut everything down. We don't. I would like to see more sustainable production. I would like to see more green technology. But until then, we can still reduce our pollution. We can still consider the people that are surrounding these facilities, and we can still regulate in a way that protects them. We can do that now. We don't have to wait for the new technological advance to come out that we can employ to be more sustainable. We can do these things right now. We don't have to wait. We really can, and we should. So thank you for listening. This is the Environmental Justice Lab podcast, where we are for the people and for the planet. See you next time.